Welcome to MDV The Blueprint. We have a fantastic show today. My guest, friend of show, Beth Caldwell. Beth, I appreciate you. This was your brainchild, and I think the topic is just absolutely outstanding. And basically what we're going to talk about is property taxes, the appeal process, how property taxes are assessed on your home. Just preparing for this, I feel like I was not as an expert as I thought I was. And I know you're going to blow my mind, and you're going to give some great information to the audience. In particular, Cuyahoga and Lorain County is where this is specific to. I don't know how much it differs between state to state, but for this purposes, this is in Ohio, Cleveland, Cuyahoga, Lorain County. It'd be too much to do every single county.
Perfect. And I'm familiar with how those two counties work. I'm not familiar if other counties in the state are different.
Fantastic.
So I guess we want to get started.
Yes. So why don't you explain, first of all, how do they determine property taxes for a home?
Are we talking taxes or valuation? Let's start with valuation.
Okay, let's talk about valuations.
So every 6 years, Cuyahoga County and Lorain County, and I would imagine throughout the state, they reassess your home. And at that point, the counties do drive-by appraisals, and then they also do a regression analysis using market data through a computer program. And I know a couple years ago, Cuyahoga County bought a program that they use, and I would imagine it's kind of similar to the same programs that, a Zillow uses, or one of those where it's hard because they just take a general area. They're not doing specific, in my opinion, apples to apples. And I think that's where we're coming up with discrepancies. My phone since January has been ringing off the hook.
As is mine.
And it's a lot of people are upset, but then there's also, if you paid $600,000 for your house, guess what? They found that transfer, and even if you bought in multiples or you feel like you overpaid, you don't really have a leg to stand on as far as appealing the process. And so the county, like I said, every 6 years they reassess the properties, and you can appeal your house once every 3 years. So you can't appeal the value every year. It's something you can do once a triennial, they call it.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So every 3 years is basically your chance to do this.
Exactly.
It's reassessed every 6. And when they're coming up and they're determining your value of your home, is this county auditors that are doing this? I mean, I got to imagine this process is...
It goes through the auditor.
Oh.
And I mean, when you look at in Cuyahoga County, there's millions of houses that have to be assessed. So they say they drive by every house. I don't think they really
There's no
do.
way.
I think
they do not come in your house.
They do not come in your house.
So if you have a house that you paid $300,000 and you put an addition on, and you put a new kitchen and bath and finish the basement, they don't know that. They're still going off data. Your house could be well worth more than that, but they're assessing it at a different value.
Unless you filed permits. Because the county will, if you file permits, they will come out to the house and adjust your square footage. But that's the one thing, probably the first part of the process is look at the county auditor's profile and make sure your information is correct. Make sure, they have the correct number of bathrooms, the correct square footage. If you feel that your square footage is incorrect, you can call the appraisal department and they will send somebody out to remeasure it. Or you could hire someone to measure it. Years ago, and you being in the building industry, historically, you knew if there was a 2-story great room, when the county came out to measure, they just measured the perimeter and they never backed that 2nd-story area out. So some houses that were built 20 years ago when that 2-story great room was such a typical feature, a lot of their square footages is incorrect. And so that would be the first thing I would check to make sure that your square footage is correct.
So after they determine the value of your home, am I correct in saying that each city has, I think it's called a millage
Correct.
rate, that you multiply your value times the millage rate?
Correct.
Now, each city differs, and some have a high millage rate, some have a low millage rate. And I'm assuming it's basically based on if your city just put all new schools in, or built a new firehouse, or put a rec center in, or
Exactly.
roads. This is what is raising millage cost
Exactly.
in cities.
Historically, Bay Village has had a high millage because there's no industry to offset the residential values. Where,
Interesting.
in Westlake, you have a huge commercial base. Where in Bay Village, you have one shopping plaza or two shopping plazas. So the homeowners have historically bore the weight of the tax base.
So when you get into, and maybe this is more of opinion than a fact, do you necessarily see cities and just see the amenities of a city and realize, well, that's why your values are going up, because of all the city amenities and because of any services that you have, as opposed to a smaller city that doesn't have this and maybe doesn't have their property values, but their houses are equal style houses. Do you see that?
I don't think so, because
Okay.
I still think there are people that are going to move to Bay Village because it's Bay Village.
Village.
And there's no rec center, there's no pool that's open on Sunday, but you're right on the lake. So, and then you have Lakewood, which has a really high tax value, but like you said, they have all new schools. They have great city services. So each community has an appeal regardless of the different amenities will give a different valuation. It's not necessarily comparing apples to apples.
Gotcha. Interesting, though. I mean, yeah, it's something that after looking into this, is I'm like, I wonder if that, I wonder if that comes into play on any kind of appraisals of like, well, this is valued higher. It could be a split level per each city, and as you know, some are just higher values.
Exactly.
Can be the exact same house.
Like historically, Rocky River has sold for a higher price per square foot than
Forever. Forever. So, Beth, why are property values getting assessed, particularly the one that just came off this year, and where this is like everybody is in shock of what their values are? And I had read somewhere that just Cuyahoga County, they had a 32.22% increase over the last assessment.
Well, but if you look at 6 years, that's basically 5% a year, which
Right.
historically, Mike and I have been doing this a long time. Historically, you'd say, oh, you've been here 5 years.
Yeah.
You typically have 5% appreciation. Let's list your house here. So it seems huge, but when you realize the values were based on sales in 2017, or no, 2018, that's 6 years, the market was completely different in 2018 than it is now.
So it's not necessarily that some things do trigger reassessments. And is that like recently you have your timing of the every 6 years, but when property values are rising the way they have, is that cause for, okay, we need to get ours?
No, because they do it every 6 years, and in 2008, values went, let's say, when that mortgage crisis happened, then values went down, which we had never historically seen the assessors actually reduce property values. But the reason why we assess is the majority of schools are funded by the property taxes. So that's how Ohio does it. The communities fund their schools through property taxes.
And like roads and building new
Right.
a library for somewhere, or remodeling the library. I mean, they definitely spend the money. I mean, you can tell the cities that haven't passed the levies, and really, it's in the hand of the voters that if their millage is going to go up,
Correct.
on levies, and sometimes they're shot down, and sometimes they're not. Me, in my opinion, I would always vote for the levies because I know your property values, you're paying higher taxes, but I think that that's what increases your
completely.
property. So I would vote for anything and everything within reason, and that's what's made the property in the cities most appealing, in my opinion. So, Beth, are there misconceptions
Yes.
about assessments?
My favorite misconception is people will call me and they'll say they raise my value to $300,000, but my next door neighbor's only being taxed at $250,000, and then the person across the street is at $275,000, and why am I at $300,000? And they put together these huge spreadsheets with what their neighbors are being assessed at and want to appeal it through that. And unfortunately, what your neighbor is being assessed at isn't going to help you appeal your taxes. It's kind of, I give the example, you lost the lottery and they won the lottery. And I don't know why they're being taxed $50,000 less than you, but maybe there's a reason, but they never want to hear that there's a reason why they're being taxed more than their neighbor. The other misconception is that you can appeal a sale price. If you paid $500,000, they're eventually going to find that you paid $500,000 for your house and adjust it accordingly.
Interesting. Why don't you speak on the assessment rate? My misconception was where they assessed a home. I feel foolish that I didn't know this, but if you could enlighten me.
So you're not paying taxes based on your full market value. You're paying taxes on an assessed value. So if your house is being taxed at $500,000, you're then going to pay taxes on roughly 33% of that. Yeah. And if you go to the county website, you can see the difference between your market value and your assessed value.
So for an example, let's just, for an exercise, your house is valued at $100,000. So the assessed value would be, let's say it's 35%, $35,000. And then the millage rate is 0.070. You multiply that times 35,000, you would be paying $2,450 annually on taxes. That pretty much how it's done?
Correct.
I was always under the impression that you were paying based on the entire
value
purchase price of your home. So that in itself is enlightening to me, and I've done this for 30 years, so shame on me.
And I would suggest everyone check out the auditor's website. Lorraine County just updated theirs. It's a fabulous website, Cuyahoga County. You can go on. You can find historically what you're paying. I think Cuyahoga County goes back 10 years. They'll list the sketch of your house. They'll list every recent transfer. Well, not every. They go back to 1975. But make sure what's correct and make sure you know what you're being taxed on.
So I get my tax bill in the mail, and it's went up 35%. I am outraged. This can't be true. How could this happen? Let's talk about what are the grounds for somebody to appeal their taxes?
So to start off, you have a limited time that you can appeal the process, and it is from January 1st till March 31st, and there are no exceptions. They will not take an appeal that's filed on April 1st. There are absolutely no exceptions. It is January 1st through March 31st. And they give on the form, if you go online, if you have a recent transfer, if you have, a recent appraisal, let's say you got a home equity loan, let's say you refinanced. Those are all forms of evidence you can provide. Other things, let's say you have an estimate that your basement is structurally deficient and that you have to do significant work to your house, and you have an estimate that it's going to cost you $50,000 to appeal or to fix the issue. You can submit that. Another thing they suggest, so let's say it's a new home and you have construction costs, and your construction costs were 400,000 and they're taxing you at 550. You can submit construction cost as a form of evidence to support a discount in your tax value. You can also, let's say you have new siding and you have a new roof and new windows, so your house from the outside looks great. But inside you still have the original kitchen, you still have shed carpet, maybe there was a water leak, any sort of interior damage or deferred maintenance, you can also use that to support. And not to toot my own horn or drum up business, but the most accurate way to do it is to get an appraisal.
It's funny you say that, because clients of mine will call me immediately. Hey, can you help me out? Well, where do they have you at? And from my end, if I can help somebody out, and I'm like, yeah, that's ridiculous. I have told people, listen, I think you need to call Beth Caldwell, because I think one of the things is you can supply your own comps or get a personal appraisal.
Correct.
And in my opinion, I'd love to help everyone, and you can always call me. And if I can't help you, I will tell you. Be happy where your taxes are. You see where your neighbors are all selling. That's, I know you've been there 30 years, but you've been lucky. So I will tell them to call you. And I think I've told half a dozen people when the tax bill, you got to call Beth, because she's better at assessing your value. How much does your professional appraisal, does it hold up better than if I supply 6 or 7 comps?
It does.
I would think so.
Because a lot of times I've talked to people and they said, well, I went down and all I had was comps and they didn't give me a reduction. But so the process works. If they call me, this is how I do it. They tell me what they're being taxed at, and I do some free work for them. And I look at what's going on in the market area, because I don't want to come to your house if you're already concerned that you have to pay these extra taxes. I don't want to charge you for an appraisal and then say, guess what? Your house is worth what
More
you're
than
being
that,
taxed
at least.
or it's worth more. So I do a little preliminary work, and I ask them too, have you redone your kitchen? Have you done things that you don't want the county to know
about?
Because I will provide them with they want to see interior photos. They want to see maps. They want to see sketches. They want to see comparables. If for some reason I were to give them an appraisal that did not have or interior pictures, they would probably discount it right away. So you have to be honest about what's going on with your house. And then, I think the most successful way to appeal your taxes is to have an appraisal.
I couldn't agree more. And like I said, I welcome the phone calls. And even for my house, we looked at it and looked at comps and we're good with this.
Right.
I know it went up, but yeah, we're good.
Because we've had unprecedented, and you can talk about this, since 2020, we have seen values and skyrocketed. And unfortunately, it's going to impact your tax values. And it's that double-edged sword. Do you want your house to be worth $300 or do you want it to be worth $500? If you're selling your house, clearly you want it to be worth more so that you can take advantage of that. But the tax, I would say about 50% of the calls I'm getting, I can't help.
And you're upfront and honest.
Yes, and say,
be happy.
I don't want to take your money and give you an appraisal that's not going to help you.
Out of curiosity, if I were to call, what does that cost look like if you're doing that kind of an appraisal?
Depending on the house, it's going to be somewhere between $400 and $600. If it's extremely complex, it's going to be a lot higher. But then there additionally is a fee of probably $200 for me to have to testify. So you can't just get the appraisal and submit it. What will happen after you submit it, and you can either submit it online, you can mail it, or you can deliver it in person. If you mail it or deliver it in person, you do have to have the form that you would find on the auditor site notarized. If you submit it digitally, you do not have to have it notarized. So you submit your complaint, and they're going to be so inundated, but I would imagine within 3 to 4 months, you're going to hear back from them, and there will be a hearing.
I don't remember the year. It's going back probably 10 to 15 years in that range. But in Westlake, when they raised the taxes, they actually did something at the rec center that they had auditors there, and you could go in and appeal it there, and they would right then and there at the table would say approved for this value or not approved. Nothing like that's going to go on at this time.
You know, they did that this summer, and it wasn't. They didn't. They had a bunch of, so you could you could have done an informal appeal this summer, and I think you had till September 1st. There was another.
I missed it.
And they did have those hearings. Nothing was done then, but you could support your case at that point. Then they took it back, reviewed it, and then you either got a letter that they reduced it or they didn't. And that was done. They do the informal before it actually comes out. But with the formal, you are going to have a hearing, and you need to take me because they won't let you discuss my appraisal.
So this is getting into like the appeal hearing.
Exactly.
And what you're okay, I got you.
Right. So after you look at the requirements of things that you could appeal, and you don't have a transfer price or recent sale, you don't have any significant damage, but you do know the house across the street sold for $75,000 less than you're being assessed. So then that's when you get the appraisal and you can support the reduction through the appraisal.
So something like that is going to hold a ton of water, and
Yes.
that's pretty concrete that
Yes.
you have evidence and you should be reassessed. But 5 of your neighbors, 100,000, 200,000 higher than what they're taxing you at,
You keep your mouth.
keep your mouth shut.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then, but the other thing, so let's say, and this is rare, well, actually it's not. Let's say you're being taxed at $500,000, but you think your house is only worth $400,000 and you file an appeal, so there's a difference of more than $50,000, the school board can then file a counter complaint.
Really?
Yes. And so
How often does this come? I've never heard of that.
I will say, residentially, and we have a commercial branch at our office, and I think it happens more. Residentially, they very rarely send the school board attorney. So each school district in this area has an attorney that represents them because they're trying to get as much money as they can to keep the schools running. So they can, if the appeal is more than $50,000, file a counter complaint. And I would say if I've been to 100 hearings, maybe the school board attorney showed up 5 times. And they don't typically have an appraisal, but they will have comparables because as the homeowner, you are required to provide proof that the value is less. The school board can just say, I agree with where the county is taxing you. They don't have to have evidence. They don't have to have any proof. They can just use the auditor's value as their counter complaint.
That is so interesting. And again, something I did not know.
Right.
Okay, let's go back to the hearing.
Right. You'll eventually get a letter in the mail, and that will give you your hearing date. You can, if it's not convenient, you can ask for a continuation. But within 10 days of your hearing date, you need to supply any evidence. So let's say you filled out the application and then you got an appraisal. They need to have any evidence, or you have estimates for damage. Any sort of evidence needs to be provided to the county 10 days before the hearing so that they have time to review it. So then fast forward, your hearing date comes, you're down at the Cuyahoga County building on 9th, and your hearing's going to last probably 15 minutes, maybe a half an hour at the longest. They will swear you in to make sure you're telling the truth. They will swear me in as your expert witness. And then there's typically 3 members from the auditor's site there to ask questions. Sometimes they don't ask any questions. Sometimes they'll say, Beth, why did you use this comparable? Or why didn't you use this comparable? And they have access to the MLS, and they'll have it up on the screen. They'll do a neighborhood search, and if there is a house that's sold for $800 but everything else is selling for $600, why didn't you use this sale? Or did you consider it? I have to defend my appraisal if they have questions on it. And then they will turn to the homeowner and say, do you want to add anything? Do you have any additional information you'd like to share with your house? And I always say, keep it simple. Don't add too much. And a lot of times they'll say, we just defer to Beth and we don't have anything else to add. And then typically within a week from there, you will hear something on what your reduction was.
So if I go in and I just have comps and I do not have someone of your expertise that did an appraisal for me and is speaking on my behalf, and I'm very argumentative and I have these comps from the MLS and I have my Zillow Zestimate
Right.
and other things that I have gathered, for sure I don't carry as much weight in my argument. But would it ever get to the point that why don't we do a full-blown appraisal or give them the suggestion that let's send somebody in, court-appointed, to look at your house, and we'll give you a value that way. And, you put in a kitchen. I mean, does that kind of stuff happen?
I've never heard of that.
Okay.
Lorain County, and frankly, they're not going to want to spend the money.
Okay.
So Lorain County used to have a great program where they had, I think, 4 or 5 appraisers on the list. And you could choose one of the approved appraisers, and the county would pay half the fee. And then the homeowner was responsible for paying the other half. If it appraised for less than their assessed value, they would reduce it. If it appraised higher, they would not raise it. So it kind of said, we trust these appraisers. We know they do good work. And it gave the homeowners a little bit, it gave them some confidence, and they also didn't have to absorb the whole cost. They stopped doing that when the new auditor came in. So I'm not sure. The school board sometimes will hire an appraiser in the counter complaint, but I've never heard of them sending somebody out from the county. And then that's the risk. What if they appraise it higher?
Beth, do you have any kind of statistics of appeal processes that you have been involved in that were overruled and lowered the bill?
I have had not to toot my own horn,
Toot.
I have a good reputation at the county, and I probably am at a 99% success rate.
Damn.
The only person that didn't get the reduction was the person that for some reason chose not to have me come. So it kind of, then the evidence couldn't be discussed, and I think the appraisal discounted it. Some things you do need to know. Let's say the house is in your wife's name and not your name. Mm-hmm. You can't file the tax complaint. The complaint has to be filed in the owner's name, because I had one case where the house was in a trust. It was in the wife's name. The husband came and they said, rules of order, you aren't the homeowner. Wow. We'll hear your complaint, but know that you're probably going to have to file an appeal. And so let's say you do file, and I would say if it is a complex case, if it is a multi-million-dollar property, you probably do want to get an attorney in addition to an appraisal to help you with the process. If it's, if you're talking a minimum reduction, a basic house, I don't think you need to hire an attorney. But if it's a complex property and you're talking a significant price reduction, you do want to consider hiring an attorney.
That's great advice.
I'm trying to think.
Would have never thought about that.
The other question that everyone asks me, so let's say your house is being taxed at $500. I come out, I do an appraisal, and we get it reduced to $400. You've already paid your taxes. So they're not going to refund you, but they will give you a credit for that next tax payment. So unfortunately, right now, your taxes are due, I think, in February. So a lot of people, you have to pay your taxes. They're not going to give you a check for the difference, but they will give you a credit.
Credit on the next
Yes.
go around.
But if you're going to do it, do due diligence. Just don't go down there with a bunch of comps, because they're not going to give you a reduction based on, because here's the thing, and you've seen it and I've seen it. I'll go to do an appraisal and the people are like, oh, here's a comp. and it's not a comp. So what you and I know is a comp, the homeowner doesn't necessarily know that that's a comparable sale.
So here's a question I have. What holds more merit on an appraisal like this? If you're going for property value for taxes, I would assume what carries the most weight are houses in that neighborhood.
Correct.
Not necessarily 2 miles away of similar house.
Correct. And you also have to know how the process works. So you pay your taxes in arrears.
Correct.
So right now, if you called me and I went out to do your house, even though today is, what's the date, February 11th?
The 12th.
The 12th.
All day.
I'm doing what is called a retrospective appraisal.
Okay.
So the effective date for your appraisal will be January 1st, 2024, because that is the date they use to value your taxes. So if a house sold October 2024, they don't want to see that. They want to see comparable sales from 2023, 2022, and if it's a complex house and there aren't a lot of comps, we might be able to use 2021. But right now, what happened in 2024 has no bearing on the appraisal I'm doing. So that's the one thing that, that people aren't aware of. I constantly have people, I had someone yesterday send me a bunch of comps. Well, one of them I could use. And you have to realize this house was in Avon Lake. The neighborhood is a mix of condominium units and single-family homes. But the condominiums are freestanding. But that's still a condo, so you're not going to compare a single-family home to a condo. But this guy gave me 7 sales. 2 weren't in his neighborhood. 1 was a condo, and then all but 1 was from 2024. So I would not, even though I can help them, none of those were actually comparables. So that's unfortunate. People don't realize what a comparable is.
There's other ways, and I don't know if it's just this, but can you talk about other ways that people can lower their property taxes? And I'm talking about like maybe exemptions, tax relief programs. I think homestead is what I'm talking about. I don't know.
I don't know much about the tax relief, but the homestead I know is age-based.
Yes.
And I think don't quote me, but is it 60 or 65?
I think it's 65.
Yes.
And is that something that you need to apply for?
Yes,
this?
they're
It's
not
not
just
automatically
no,
done.
They're
so that's
not.
a big misconception that people think you automatically. They're not just going to give you the credit. It's not a huge credit, but
it's something.
It's something.
It's something.
I think it's $200 to $400 is usually the range of that. But I'm shocked at how many seniors did not take advantage of this. But anyone that's listening that is of that age, apply for homestead.
Definitely.
It's something. But not everybody does it.
No, because I don't think they don't advertise it. They don't make it public. But it is something that you can do to help.
There are other programs, and I think the best advice is to go on the county auditor's website.
You're going to go to the Cuyahoga County Board of Revision.
Okay.
And they will give you, there's a tab with frequently asked questions. They will help you. The form you need to file with the complaint is on there. And it's a pretty good site, and it will help you.
So you're printing off this thing, and you're going to get your appeal.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So the way, let's review. I'm upset. I want to appeal. I go on the site. I print out my form. I have my tax bill. First thing you're probably going to do is you're going to look on Zillow or on a public site and do your homework. Then if you have a friend as an agent, you're going to contact them and ask if they can help. Again, if you can help, here you go. But if you really want to win this thing, and you think you have merit, call Beth.
Exactly.
Beth will tell you you're not going to steer anyone wrong.
I'm not.
It is going to cost you some money, but I'm going to save you a lot of money.
Right, and I'm also honest to a fault.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to take your money
Nope.
and give you an appraisal that's not going to help you because you're already struggling financially, or not struggling, but are worried about paying your taxes. You don't want to pay for an appraisal that's going to do you no good.
No, you're one of the most respected leaders in this industry, without a doubt. I mean, you've done it forever, and I know when you say something, it's hard to. I mean, we could argue about it, but I know you know more on it than I did. So that's the process, and if you're going to have a better chance with you in doing it on your own.
You are, unless, of course, you have, and it's on their website, you have an arm's length sale within 3 years. You have estimates from a contractor that are for significant damage, or another, and you can go on the county and it will also tell you dated interior/exterior photos of the property, and or new construction costs that reflect lower than your tax appeal. So yes, I would love to do an appraisal. I would love to help you with the process, but also know there is evidence you can provide on your own without an appraisal.
Sure. After I have that conversation, I know, well, you still need somebody.
Right.
I can only take it so far.
Exactly.
I have never, I would not want to go into to court and try to argue that on somebody else's behalf.
Correct.
But you're obviously so much well-versed
and I have
do
to
that.
say, I'm not arguing
No,
on your
I
behalf
understand. You're
because I can't.
You're
I
providing
can't
evidence.
Right. I can't advocate for a homeowner. I can advocate for my appraisal. An attorney can advocate for the homeowner.
But people will go to that length,
Yes.
you and an attorney.
Because some people are unsure of the process. And I will tell you, it's a conference room with a table. And the 3 people, I will say, Lorain County's a little more tough. But Cuyahoga County, they're fair. There's appraisers, there's realtors. There are people that know the business that are on the other side of the board. They also respect you as a homeowner and realize that your taxes help pay their salary. So they will treat you with respect and they will listen to what you have to say. So it's not a process you need to be afraid of, but you do need to do your due diligence before you go down there.
So limited time to do this.
Yes,
Again, the deadline is March 31st
correct.
to do this appeal.
And you don't, so let's say you're out of town and you get back March 15th and say, oh, I only have 2 weeks, and you call me and I can't get in, or you call another appraiser and they are not available. You can file the complaint without the appraisal, and then you just have to submit it within 10 days of your hearing. So
It's good information.
Yes, so you can appeal to March 31st, but then 10 days prior to your hearing, you have to submit the evidence. Don't wait till you get the letter to call. You can call us in April. We can get the process started. If you wait till 10 days before, or you get the hearing and it's 14 days before, you're not going to have enough time to get that appraisal done.
What's your turnaround on something like this?
About 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Are you seeing that you're doing more of this than your everyday bank appraisals?
Yes, right now. Really? And it's also slow. Like, the market's slow. It's winter. I did, at dinner last night, my husband said, how was your day? And I said I had 4 assignments, and he said, all tax appeal. And I said, no, only 1. So the market is starting to pick up. So I had 1 divorce appraisal yesterday, 1 tax appeal, and then 2 purchases.
That's good.
Yeah, so the market's starting to pick up again.
How many phone calls do you think you get a day, though?
Oh, I can't even keep up with them. That dreaded where you get your voicemail is almost full. I got that
Do
message
you know
a couple
most
times.
of the people that are some of them like could be past clients or friends that are reaching out?
About half the people I know or were referred.
You're referred. That's,
Yes,
yeah,
we're
see,
referred.
What happens when you're good? Everyone gives out your number.
But, I got someone the other day. I'm in Kirtland. I don't go to Kirtland. And my address shows in Avon Lake. Why would you be calling an appraiser in Avon Lake if you lived in Kirtland? So, and I enjoy this. And I enjoy testifying. A lot of people are uncomfortable with it. It's an easy process. It's nothing. I guess the bottom line, if you think you have a case, you shouldn't be afraid to start the process and advocate for yourself and your house.
Good stuff.
And if you don't do it, then they're going to use that the next time you get reassessed.
Right.
And so it's not going to go down. It's only unless something catastrophic
crashes.
happens in our market, but the values are only going to continue to go up.
Well, I think this has been just incredible information, not just for me, hopefully the audience. Do you have any other advice you want to add? Because I think we've
think we've
I
covered
think
it.
we've covered everything.
I think we've covered it. But it's an easy process. Don't be afraid to do it.
Yes. Easy process. Just do it. And feel free to reach out to me. I'll direct you to Beth if I can't help. But yeah, good stuff, Beth. Great topic.
Good to talk to you.
You're always
good to
great
see
to
you.
talk to you. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Make sure to follow us on social media at MDV The Blueprint on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We post a ton of great content. And please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel so you never miss out on an episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.